Artful Framer Studios on Clark Street, and she is a pastelist extraordinaire. Pastels rock. She juries and teaches workshops across the U.S. and internationally, and has won numerous awards and honors. She has traveled to nearly 20. Huh?
She's not a technical.
And she's not technically, yeah. She's traveled to nearly 20 countries and around the U.S., and she says Chicago is still her favorite place to explore and paint.
Yay. I'll try not to whistle at you. So this is more like show and tell because, you know, the framing options are endless. And so I just brought some examples to share with you. I started painting when I was a kid, and I grew up in a very small town. My parents took me to another small town that offered art classes, so I started doing that. The University of Illinois offered extension classes. So when I was in high school, I started painting in oil and taking extension courses in summer. And so I had credits when I started full-time at the U of I, and got my husband there. We married as soon as I graduated, and then I started grad school at Eastern in painting and started a framing company. So I was framing things when I was in high school, and my parents were paying for it. This was really expensive. And so when I got married and had to start paying for my own frames, I started the company. So that was 40 years ago, and we moved to Chicago from downstate in '87, and I moved the framing business with me up here, and we opened the shop on Clark Street in 2003. So my husband does prints and cards of my work, and then I have 3 people that help me with the framing. So we're open 7 days a week, and we work with artists, give them a discount, we keep our prices lower than the big box stores, even when they have their 60% off coupons. So just give us a try sometime. But anyway, my mission today is to help you if you're participating in a plein air event and you have to, get stuff framed quickly. If you're in a quick draw, you have 2 hours to paint, and you've got to have it on your easel and framed and looking nice, and trying to wow the judge and some buyers. So you have to do some planning in advance. When you the back looks terrible because this was a piece that was submitted to a plein air show, so you don't have time to put paper on it and all that. And they want to see your documentation that you did start with a blank canvas. So they will stamp your piece before you paint, so you don't slip in something you've already painted. And then this is from Mexico Beach, Florida, so they have their own sticker. Mexico Beach is the part of Florida that was wiped out with Michael. So going back there in May, it's going to be interesting to see what there is to paint. But anyway, so I just wanted to show you what is expected of you when you do a plein air event. This event, the Forgotten Coast, is a 10-day painting event. So we do 25 to 30 paintings that are submitted and framed. So I drive to that one because I have to take so many frames. So I'm always thinking about the color of the frame that I have that fits that panel. Because you have to be practical because you don't have a huge supply of frames in your car. I try to match everything up in advance, so I'm prepared, to get it done and run with it. So, and then they put it up on the wall and so forth. So this is a kind of a funky frame that I painted the panel to match the frame. I didn't know what I was going to paint on the panel. This is oil. But it just kind of blends with this kind of funky frame. So,
Do you mean you pre-painted the panel?
the panel was, it was blank, but it was toned to match the frame. So just little things you can do.
Did you paint it in the frame?
No.
No.
No, they're really
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Feels
So
like
it's
an
not
excellent
a great painting, but it just to show if you have a, you know, I do recycle frames a lot, just to show if you have an unusual frame that you want to use, just kind of coordinate your panel with that. I work equally in oil and pastel. When I go to these plein air events, I take both. And when I drive, I have a bag with all my oil stuff, and then I have a bag with all my pastel stuff. But when I fly, I have to try to condense it as much as possible. So I've got a Strata easel in one bag, and my pastels, whoops, in another. And then I have one tripod that fits both. And they both have easels that flip up, in the box, so I don't have to carry a separate easel. So it's pretty self-contained. And I actually checked this or I don't check it, I carry it on and put it in the overhead with the pastels, because they're so fragile. I don't want them to go through the luggage. And then the oils, go in my suitcase and my Strata. But I don't do a ton of plein air events because I teach a lot. So I've kind of let that, take over. So I probably do 2 or 3 at the most a year. So you're welcome to come up and handle everything and take a look. So, but again, I was thinking about, the color of the frame when I painted this piece. This was up in Northbrook at their plein air event. So, you just want to try to make the frame really harmonize with the painting. Like Errol's frame back there is great with that piece. The width is correct. The tone is correct. And the painting with CJ's piece is really a gorgeous frame. The nude, right here, that's a gorgeous frame. So it's real mellow, it really enhances the painting, finishes it. So you try to get a frame that's wide enough to really make your piece make a statement. I love wide frames on small paintings. Not just because I'm selling molding, but it just really, brings the piece to life and makes it important.
How can you, as not as a professional framer, but what kind of criteria and how do we judge? I mean, go by your sense, your eye of what the balance should be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is there a rule of thumb sort of, or?
Can you repeat the questions?
Oh,
Is there a rule
Lori
of
wants
thumb
to know,
about the width
there's
of
a rule of thumb about the width of a painting, or frame on a painting. If it's a larger painting, you're going to need a wider frame. It looks wimpy sometimes if the frame's too narrow. And just the color tones in the painting kind of tell you what color frame you need.
Because I was thinking more about the width, because if we're doing plein air, and they're mostly 8x10s, 9x12s, and basically if you get the Dick Blick frames, they're a certain width. And is that based on anything, or is it just that this happens to be the width?
They're called plein air frames.
Right,
Yeah.
and they're what are they, 2 and a?
3.
Almost 3. I mean, is there any sort of rule of thumb? Yeah, ratio.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
That's
the question.
That's a nice ratio, I think,
Yeah.
for painting to give it some substance. Beware of using black frames. I know black frames are important, but if there's no black in the painting, that you've got this real dark value around your painting, and there's no black that corresponds to that frame. At this Florida event. I do it every May. It's, and I've done it for many years. And John Stern, Eric Rhodes mentioned him. He's like the foremost, what's that?
The Irvine guy.
Yeah, the Irvine Museum, foremost impressionist, California impressionist authority. I had won the People's Choice Award, and he was critiquing the paintings that had won awards. And there was a time when everybody wanted to get rid of their gold frames. So everything went to silver or black. And so I had taken all these silver frames down to Florida, and he said, I really like this painting, but the frame is terrible. It was silver on like water lilies and so forth. And he thinks every impressionist painting or plein air painting should be in a gold frame. So that's just what an authority thinks. So just,
He's not a painter.
no, but he knows painting. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. For those of us who are watercolorists,
Mhm.
it seems the framing approach is so much different because normally we have a mat.
Mhm.
And it seems like most of the frames then are very slender. And
Right.
those frames, I don't think, compete or send the same message as somebody working in maybe pastel or oil.
Yeah, that's.
If somebody
that's
brings you
possible.
something to frame that's a watercolor, you're not choosing a wide frame usually or suggesting it, are you? Or
Well,
are you?
you can frame pastels and watercolors without a mat, using spacers or stacked frames. So this is a stacked frame. It's a linen liner, and the glass is between the frame and the linen liner. So you can treat a watercolor or pastel like an oil, you just need the glass over it. And I use AR glass, which looks like museum glass, but it's not that extra cost of museum. Watercolors need museum glass because they're works on paper. The watercolor can fade. Pastels are the pure dried pigment that's in oil. It's just, it doesn't have oil in it, so it's just compressed pigment, the very same pigment. So it's color fast if you use good quality pastels. And if you use like a mounted paper, it's not susceptible to, the harmful light.
Do you use fixative?
I never spray.
Could you repeat it? Yeah, repeat the question.
Do you use fixative? I do not. Some people do.
You just imagine it falling down, but if you don't overload
Yeah,
your paper.
yeah. You can, if it does trickle down, you can take the frame apart and clean the
Yeah.
liner. You need to. Sometimes when you ship pieces to shows, that happens.
There's a
How do you
question
do
way-
that? That's a good.
Toss it.
How do you?
You kind of, there's a question way in the
I'm
back.
sorry.
So what is your comment about using mats for watercolors? Is that something you recommend against?
No.
Okay,
You
okay,
can,
just wanted to make
yeah,
sure.
you can use mats or not.
Okay,
With water, or with pastels, you can use mats or not.
okay.
It seems the trend over the last few years with pastels is to not use mats, to treat them as oil paintings. But you do have to have the glass or spacers to separate the glass from the pastel.
And you're not crazy about black. You're not partial or you're not crazy about black. I ask as a consumer.
I do like black frames if there's black in the painting. If there's not black.
How about if there's like a dark?
If it's truly dark, leaning towards black, I think that works. But if it's a, umber, browns, warm tones and so forth, I would suggest that they choose a dark wood rather than black.
Are there any paints or anything with if you're buying, I'm talking for a friend here, if you're buying a lot of black frames, like a case or whatever of them, then is there anything you can do to paint those frames? Is there better paint than others to use to paint them?
To paint,
The
to
frames,
change the
yeah, to change the
finish.
color.
Yeah, you can steel wool them. If they have some detail, you can, I don't know if these would
Yeah,
work,
like one of
but-
those,
Yeah, maybe this one, you could rub off some of this edge and highlight the edges, and it would warm it up, you know, getting rid of some of the black. So, actually, there's no black in this painting. This was a plein event piece, you know, and I had to pop it into a frame. And so often at these big plein events, there are frame vendors there. So, you know, if you paint more than you've brought frames for, that you can buy frames from them. So that's kind of what happened here. And, you know, we all have to use what we have, you know, because even being in the business, it's expensive. I paint a lot, and I have to recycle frames myself, because it just adds up.
What do you do with damaged frames? We have a lot of chips, or you know, the gold comes off or something.
Yeah.
Or you go back to back, or front to back, and then the screw on the back. Hits
Always be sure to do face to face. Don't put your hardware next to the frame behind it. You can, he's wanting to know how to repair damaged frames. You can use wood filler, and you can sponge on a color. You know, if this had a ding in it, I'd probably use wood filler and then sponge it all the way around with black paint.
Oh, okay. So it's all
You're not going to have the same look, but you've saved your frame.
Yeah.
If the leaf comes off, just, you know, you'll have to take the painting out, of course, but again, you can just sponge some gold, but do it all the way around so that it's consistently, so it matches all the way around. I have, I use lots of offset clips of different depths. So it's important to have these. Again, when I drive, I take this whole toolbox that has everything in it that I need, except I forgot to put the wire clippers back in there. So these just fit down into frame.
What is it you have in your hand?
These are offset clips, and I want you all to come up and you can dig through all this stuff, but they're different depths. Some are shallow, some are very deep, if you have a real deep shadow box frame that you're using.
And they're for putting the wire at the back?
No, they hold the panel in. So here we go. So your painting goes in, the offset clip goes here, you screw it in, and it holds the panel in securely. Work to a show, because truly they just like throw things, you know, even though you have hair on the box. But
Do you ever use those little black, you know?
She just had them in the point.
oh, the points,
points,
point driver.
That's
Yep.
what it is,
Yeah. If you're really serious about,
It's an alternative to the staple.
yeah, they're not super reliable if you're shipping. You know, they just go in like this, and then if they drop this like this, the points can give way and the art can fall out.
Do the offsets also work for canvases that might be a little higher than the wood, so it...
They do, yeah. It's best if your canvas does not protrude from the back. Try to keep, you know, this is more like for a panel.
Where do you get the offsets clips?
You can get them at the hardware store. And all different depths, depending on what you need.
Do you have some tips on framing or wet painting? That was my question. Exactly.
Yeah, you have to just pop it right in the frame. And sometimes, like if you have an oil that you pop into a frame that has some gold around the edge, then later when you take the painting out, you might have some of that gold leaf on the painting because it's adhered a little bit, but you can kind of scrape it off.
Do you do any floating frames?
Yes, we do lots of floaters. I don't have the canvas here.
Do you reuse floaters?
Yeah. Well, if you're painting on a stretched canvas, there's a frame that it's called a reveal or a floater frame. I don't know if there's any in here, but
Maybe that one behind that screen?
This
Yeah.
one,
yeah, it's kind of L-shaped and the canvas fits in here. And you want the canvas to be below the surface of the edge because it's just serving as a bumper essentially to protect the canvas.
So can you reuse the ones that are for panels?
Yeah,
You can do the ones for panels now, right?
yeah, and I've never used those, but
I haven't either.
Barbara just brought
I brought
some
one.
in.
Ampersand, I found it, like ampersand makes a floating frame that is for both, stretched canvas and for panels. And for panels, they have an attachment, and I'm experimenting with it, I'm playing with it. You put something under the panel to lift it a little bit.
Yeah, a little prop.
Yeah, a little prop to bring it up. But it's as, pretty much as Nancy said, it's a lip, and they come in two different widths, 7 by 8s and 1.5 8. And it does accommodate, regular 3
So how do you fix it
um,
so that it can be removed?
you unscrew it. Because they come, it's kit, it comes with 4 long screws. And again, I haven't done it. And so I asked Nancy if she would help me once in case I got into trouble, which I invariably will. And so, so I'm playing with it. They come really with long screws too, because it's a wide a thing. I mean, by the time you cradle it and you're protecting it, there's more than just the cradle that kind of goes down and then another lip and down like that. So,
we could- Have you tried double stick foam tape? Because I've used that on the wood
I
ones.
haven't done that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's, let's, maybe afterwards,
Sorry.
let's
Yeah.
solve some problems if we need
Yeah,
to,
okay.
but let's,
Yeah, and be careful, yeah.
I had a question now, if you're doing like a quick paint and you've got a wet water paint, how do you put it in the frame so you're not smashing up the wet paint against the frame?
you are.
You just are.
Put tape on it. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, you could,
That's
yeah. Great idea. You could just tape off the edge if you wanted. Hadn't thought of that, but you could do that.
on the frame.
Yeah,
Or
and,
drawn.
your frame's gonna give you, you're talking about turning it over and putting it in, and are you concerned about the face of the painting? Because the frame should give you enough height that you could work upside down and,
Yeah, I'm
Is that what
talking
you
about when you put the picture in the frame, that 1/4 inch is gonna,
you're talking about the rabbit sticking
Yeah.
to the, yeah.
it's
Yeah,
gonna
just,
stick to
you
the
could,
frame then.
you could tape it off.
Draw a line.
It would, probably the tape would stick to the painting when you took the painting out, but
Yeah.
you could maybe peel it off.
Tape it to the frame.
Tape it to the frame.
Is it expected that it's kissing the frame? Because what I've done is on each of the corners, I put a tiny little spacer so that there's like 1/8 of an inch for the wet
You could do
painting.
that.
I was
Good
never good enough to get dry paintings up on the wall for a show. They were always wet. So I had to come up with a technique, so I just put a little spacer. But is there a reason why you shouldn't have a space between the painting and the frame, like 1/8 of an inch or something?
No, if it's not real detectable, it should be fine. You know, sometimes you can see down in the corner when it's hanging on the wall, and you wonder what that is. But if it's subtle, it should be fine. Yeah, there's plastic spacers, or little pieces of wood you could use. Oh, I've got 30 seconds. So please come rifle through all this stuff, take a look at it. And I have a bunch of things to give away, some magazines, and then these are to carry paintings. They kind of cradle. So you can have these, if anybody wants these. And then you tape them together so you can carry the paintings on. Sorry.
Just turn it off. And
then, for those of you who work in pastel, sweetest little guy made this for me, and I don't sharpen my pastel, so if anybody does or works with color pencil, it's all yours. And then I have a bunch of bags from the planner convention. They're great to tote your stuff, but I'm not using them, so I'd rather, if you think you use them, you can have them.
Did they
And
do it with the pilot girl on it? You know, like the flying
Plain Air Force?
plane Air Force?
Oh, do I have one?
Do you have one?
Uh-uh.
No.
I don't. I have Tucson, San Diego, and San Diego.